Joining us now on the Boardwalk Honda hotline, Mike McGarry, press of Atlantic City. Had an interesting game that he was in attendance at last night as Buna went on the win. Pleasantville went on the win 21-14. Although I'm not fully sure I actually wrote all my notes down right. So, Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe you were at the Pleasantville-Buna game last night. I'm right there, right?
Yes, you are. I was in Buena Vista Township for Pleasantville. Pleasantville wins 21-14. They clinch a share of the West Jersey Football League United Division title, and it is the first football championship that a Pleasantville team has won in 42 years.
You know, Mike, it's incredible how far Pleasantville has come. I mean, it was just, several years ago that, we were reading, the stories about how, Coach Sacco was walking the halls trying to get anybody to come out to the football team. And now they got a division title. It's absolutely incredible to see the growth and the evolution of this program.
Yeah, I mean, never say never. If you're a struggling football program, Pleasantville is your model. Coach Chris Sacco goes in there, takes over that program in 2015. In the 5 years before he got there, they were 3-47. Now they're one of the top South Jersey Group 2 programs. They've made the playoffs the past 2 years. This will be their third straight winning season, and tremendous effort last night. The freshman quarterback Marlon Leslie really turned the game around with 2 long completions in the third quarter, including a 35-yard touchdown pass to Keon Henry. Ernest Howard, a linebacker and running back for Pleasantville, just leads that team with his toughness. His toughness is really at the core of that team's success. And linebacker Amin Bailey with a big tackle on a fourth down play on Buna's last possession to stop Buna at the Pleasantville 15-yard line. Really a great job by the Greyhounds last night to clinch a share of that division title. They can win it outright with a victory at Middle Township next Friday night.
And let's not sell Buna short. This is a team that's had a good year as well. They now fall to 6-2 on the year. It's not like Pleasantville is playing some pushover. Buna's a good team as well.
Oh, Buna's outstanding. Yeah, they're a contender in Group 1. They had opened up the season with a 35-0 loss to Gateway Regional, and then they had turned around and really dominated their next 6 opponents. They love to run the football. Sharon Smith, a sophomore fullback, ran for, I think, 120 yards and 2 touchdowns last night. Samir Garrison, a freshman running back, another standout. Antonio Thompson on the defensive line for Buna, one of the more underrated players in South Jersey. Buna played well last night. It was a well-played football game. Pleasantville just, made a player or two better to come away with the 21-14 win. But both of those teams, Pleasantville in South Jersey Group 2 and Buna in Group 1, will be factors when the playoffs start in 2 weeks.
And just to touch base, so you mentioned Buna in Group 1. What kind of position do you think Buna is going to be in? Kind of in the overall standings in that Group 1.
Oh, they'll be in good shape. I mean, last year they made the South Jersey Group 1 semifinals. This year, I would suspect that they would get a home playoff game in the first round. It's kind of difficult to tell with the way they're doing the playoffs this year where teams are exactly going to be and what section they're going to be in. But Buna in Group 1 can certainly play with anybody.
Mike McGarry joining us on the Boardwalk Honda hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Follow him on Twitter at ACPressMcGarry. And Mike, back to Pleasantville, just one more thought. You're never going to undercut a program, for example, like a Holy Spirit that's a juggernaut. But I feel like the success of Pleasantville is definitely going to cause more young people to maybe not be so quick to jump to the Holy Spirit or the St. Joe's or the other schools, and maybe now stay in Pleasantville because of the fact that they see they can win and have success, and they're seeing guys get looks from colleges at Pleasantville as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. You look back to last year's team, Muhammad Torre, Pleasantville graduate linebacker, now at Rutgers. They had a couple other players go on to sign Division I scholarships. Ernest Howard, the linebacker and running back I mentioned before, has gotten some Division I looks. And what you're seeing is exactly right. You're seeing that success sort of build on itself, and you're seeing players that might have gone away to, some of the area parochial schools now staying at Pleasantville. The freshman quarterback, Marlon Leslie's a perfect example. 5 or 6 years ago, does he go to Pleasantville? Who knows? But he's there now. And last night with Pleasantville down 14-7 in the third quarter, he throws a 35-yard pass over the middle to Ernest Howard, and then 2 plays later throws a 35-yard touchdown pass, as I mentioned, to Keon Henry. All of a sudden the game's 14-13, and Pleasantville has all the momentum in the world. So that's a great point you're making there. You're seeing players, stay at Pleasantville. You're seeing players sort of transfer to Pleasantville. So, the key for any, public school, they want to keep their players that grow up in their towns with them, and Pleasantville is certainly doing that now.
Speaking of the parochial schools, Holy Spirit, I mean, that game was nuts. We had it here on 97.3 ESPN last night, 47-27 final, 11 combined touchdowns in that game last night, Mike. And all I could think of when we were running the game on the air last night was, I hope that this is a sign of things to come, because and this is just me as maybe a member in the media. You can tell me how you feel about this. You want a good game, right? You want to see an entertaining game. You want the people who show up to have an entertaining game. And sometimes when you hear about certain games, you may assume there might be a blowout, or might be one-sided, and you want the fans, or you want yourself as a media to have something interesting to write about or talk about. And I'm kind of hoping that maybe not for for Holy Spirit to come down to the pack per se, but it would be nice if there were more exciting competitive games for Holy Spirit, which in the past, Mike, has really steamrolled a lot of teams.
Yeah, I mean, you want an interesting storyline. You always want a great game. A great game is easy to write, or an entertaining game, and you certainly had that out in Absecon last night. I think the quarterback, Trevor Cohen, described it in the story Dave Weinberg wrote for us in the Press of Atlantic City as a lot of fun. It's always a lot of fun when you throw 4 touchdown passes. So in a game, any quarterback who throws 4 touchdown passes, 3 of them to Elijah Stewart, is going to say after the game it was a lot of fun. And Holy Spirit will take that game. They'll try to build some momentum right now. They're 4-3. They've kind of had an up and down season. They really haven't gotten, any momentum. Well, they'll try to get some going now, and they'll try to build off that win as they've got, St. Joe in their annual regular season showdown next Saturday, and then they'll go on to the state non-public 2 playoffs, where they'll be one of the favorites along with St. Joe. Of course, those 2 teams met in the title game last year up at MetLife Stadium with St. Joe winning. So you'll take a Holy Spirit team that's kind of had an up and down season, a team that hasn't really, got anything going momentum-wise. We'll try to build on that great offensive performance and victory last night.
Speaking of St. Joe, we will have that game here on 97.3 ESPN next Saturday at noon. What can we expect to see from that matchup, Mike? Because I know that, Holy Spirit and St. Joe, yeah, they face each other up at MetLife, but these are a bit different teams, look-wise, style-wise this year with some of the guys who graduated.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to see, I think you're going to see an entertaining offensive game as Holy Spirit showed last night. Offensively, they can play with anybody. Not only, as I mentioned, Trevor Cohen, Elijah Stewart, Ahmad by receiver, dynamic running backs they've got there, and Elijah Gray and Patrick Smith. Tough to stop. And, when you flip it over to Holy Spirit, to St. Joe, you got to look at Jada Byers, what he's done this year. He's our reigning press player of the year. Has a great game last Friday night against West Deptford as they win 14-13. You've got Jaden Shertell at quarterback, and St. Joe, a team that's kind of famed for running, throwing the ball a little bit more last year. I mean, throwing the ball a little bit more this year. They beat West Deptford 14-13 last Friday night, and Jaden Shertell threw for 190-something yards. St. Joe ran for about 80 yards. It was the first time in 15 years that St. Joe had won a football game without running for more than 100 yards in it. So a little bit more of a wide-open offense for St. Joe. And a big game for St. Joe today. They're out in Hamilton, obviously hosting Timber Creek in a game that will decide the West Jersey Football League Continental Division title. So St. Joe with a big one today as they too look to build some momentum heading into that, their annual clash with Holy Spirit in the state non-public 2 playoffs.
A couple other local games I want to hit on with you real quick, Mike. You had Egg Harbor Township winning last night 18-12. They now are 3-4, and junior running back Christopher Decker, 155 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. They get EHT the win, and from what I understand, it looks like if I'm reading all the numbers, because I don't claim to be an expert on how the playoffs work in high school football, but at least from what I can look like, it looks like EHT is still mathematically in it.
Yeah, they're still mathematically in it. They're probably going to be on the outside looking in when the playoff situation is finalized there in South Jersey Group 5. You look at it, it's the top, 16 teams that make it right now. But a big win for them last night. They're a program that has struggled the past couple of years. They got a big win last week against Cherry Hill East, a game I was at. Yasir Trinywell with a big performance in that game, returning an interception for a touchdown and returning a blocked field goal for a touchdown. And after that game, EHT coach Kevin Stetzer had talked about just sort of maintaining that momentum, going to Bridgeton and getting another win. They do that. They've won 2 in a row. They're 3-4 right now. So some momentum for an EHT team that's very young and is trying to build something out there in EHT.
And then also you have St. Augustine Prep winning 20-7, advancing a record of 5-3. They had beaten Holy Spirit the week before, and this is a Prep team. It just seems like Pete Lancetta's got them churning business as usual. They had a tough start to the schedule, but they're in a prime position to really maybe make some noise.
Yeah, I mean they're right now a different team than they were early in the season. We've talked in the past with Pete about the difference that transfers Kanye Udo, Carnell Davis, and Angelo Vocalis have made on that team. They start 1-3. They're now 5-3. Kanye Udo rushes for more than 200 yards last night, the sophomore running back. So St. Augustine at 5-3. Huge game next Friday night. They'll play undefeated Williamstown. Williamstown is number 1 in the Press Elite 11. They're the consensus number 1 team in South Jersey. St. Augustine will host them next Friday night. St. Augustine at 5-3 with a chance to still have a say in who's the best team, the mythical South Jersey Championship. And obviously, when the state non-public 4 playoffs open up in a couple of weeks, we'll see where St. Augustine fits in there. But, their win last night over Cherokee sets up a huge game with undefeated Williamstown next Friday night at St. Augustine.
Mike McGarry on Twitter, at AC Press McGarry. I know you always have a thought and opinion about the Phillies, so I got to ask you before we get too far along here. Joe Girardi, Mike, he's now the Phillies manager. Thumbs up, thumbs down, any concerns? What were some of your initial reactions, and now you have a couple of days to think about it?
Well, I think it's an absolute home run. I give it a big thumbs up. I think it was the only move the Phillies could make, and they made it. As I wrote in the Press of Atlantic City, I think the hiring gives them instant credibility, and it was a team in need of some credibility after the Gabe Kapler hiring, after the press conference of 2 weeks ago with owner John Middleton kind of overruling general manager Matt Klentak, really left the kind of what was going on there with the Phillies in doubt. I think Girardi is a no-brainer. 10 years as a Yankee manager. There hasn't been too many things he hasn't seen as a manager. 200 games over 500, managed the Yankees to a World Series. I think he's a guy who is perfectly suited for this modern era. He understands the value of analytics. He knows how to use analytics, but he hasn't abandoned a traditional managing approach. I think he's a blend of both. I think he's exactly what he needed. And I think the Phillies, for the second year in a row, they might be winning the offseason. Last year with the big Bryce Harper signing and the JT Realmuto trade, I think this Joe Girardi hiring is a first step towards winning this offseason. Now we'll see in 2020, I guess, if they can finally, win during the actual season.
Yeah, Mike, and I hear what you're saying, but I'm telling you, though, I'm still concerned that I don't trust Matt Klentak. I don't trust this front office yet in that they can actually build a complete baseball team. Like you said, they can win the offseason, but can they put the roster together to give Girardi the chance to win enough games to make a run in the postseason?
Well, I think that's an open question. I have liked some of the moves that Matt Klentak has made. Obviously, he's made some bad decisions. We know what the bad decisions are. Obviously, trusting the young pitchers, the Vince Velasquez's, the Nick Pavettas, thinking that they were going to take a step forward last season. Obviously, they didn't. That was a big problem. But, there's no denying that Klentak has made some good moves. The McCutchen signing was looking like a good one before McCutchen got hurt. The trade for JT Realmuto looks like a good one. Some of the pickups that they made during the season have worked for them. So I think Klentak has done a solid job. Obviously, there's a lot of work to do, especially with the pitching staff. But I just think Joe Girardi goes in and gives them a sense of credibility. I think he gives them a sense of, they kind of know what they're doing. I think he knows what he's doing. He'll become the face of the franchise. I think that's good for them. And I think if they had gone to a more inexperienced guy, especially off the way that press conference had gone 2 weeks ago, who knows what the situation would have been. But this hiring, I think it's a home run. I think Girardi was the best guy out there. I think he's exactly what he needs. And I'll say this. Look at New York and the reaction that Met fans had. He was the guy Met fans wanted. They didn't get him, and the Met fans are very upset. So, you can judge. You got a guy that your division rival wanted. That makes it an even better hire, I think, for you.